Imagine being married for years, thinking that everything is fine, only to discover that your partner has been hiding something from you, a secret that was bigger than you could ever have imagined. Separate bank accounts, odd behavior, unexplained silence. You start to put the pieces together and realize that the truth is far darker than you ever expected. This is the story of betrayal, deception, and the ultimate question: who can you really trust when everything you thought was secure is suddenly falling apart? Stay with us till the end, because the truth is about to be revealed, and it will leave you questioning everything. Laura had always believed that trust was the foundation of any relationship. She had built her marriage to Tom on this very principle. They had been together for over 10 years, navigating the ups and downs of life, supporting each other through career changes, financial struggles, and raising their children. They had even made a mutual decision to keep their finances separate, each handling their own bank accounts and spending as they saw fit. It seemed like a sensible arrangement at the time, giving both of them the space to manage their finances independently. But recently, something had felt off. The silence that had started to grow between them was now deafening. It wasn't that they fought, or that there was any major incident that had caused the shift. It was the little things. Tom had been distant, coming home later than usual, and there were nights when he didn't even bother to talk about his day. Laura noticed the change, but she couldn't put her finger on why it was happening. She had tried to reach out to him, tried to ask him about his day, about what was going on in his life, but Tom's answers were always short, his demeanor always cold. He would brush her off with vague excuses or claims of work stress. At first, Laura believed him. After all, he had been putting in extra hours at work, and he was trying to get a promotion. But soon, the strange behavior began to take a toll on her. The communication gap between them widened, and despite living in the same house, they began to feel like strangers. One evening, after Tom left for yet another late-night meeting, Laura found herself sitting alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, and the kids had already gone to bed. As she absent-mindedly scrolled through her phone, Laura's eyes landed on a recent bank statement for Tom's account, something she hadn't looked at in months. She wasn't snooping, it was just a routine task she had set aside for the week. But what she saw made her stomach drop. There were several large withdrawals, more than usual, marked as business dinners and entertainment. Laura frowned, her heart starting to race. These were expenses that seemed unusual for their typical lifestyle. The amounts were too high for dinner outings or entertainment, and she knew Tom wasn't the type to overspend. She could have sworn that he hadn't mentioned these things to her. The more she looked at the statements, the more the pieces started to fall into place. He had been acting distant, avoiding conversations, and now this: suspicious withdrawals from his account. Laura's hands trembled as she dialed Tom's number. He answered quickly, his voice unusually calm, as if he were expecting her call. "Hey, I was just going to call you," he said, his voice still warm but distant. "Tom, we need to talk," Laura said, her voice shaking. "I just saw the withdrawals from your account. What's going on? You didn't tell me about these." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Laura's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for an explanation. But when Tom finally spoke, his voice was far too nonchalant. "I told you, it's just work stuff," he replied. "Don't worry about it. I'll explain later." Laura felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "No, Tom, this isn't just work stuff. I've seen the statements. What's going on?" Another long pause. Tom's silence spoke volumes. Laura's heart raced with the realization that she might already know the answer, but she didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to admit to herself that the man she had trusted for so long was keeping secrets from her, secrets that could tear their entire life apart. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond. Her mind was spinning, her chest tight with anxiety. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can keep doing this, Tom. The distance, the silence, it's killing me. We've always been open with each other, but now, I don't know who you are anymore. There was no response. Not from Tom, and not from her own heart, which felt as if it were breaking into pieces. Her mind was flooded with so many questions. Who was he really seeing? Why was he hiding this from her? What had happened to the trust they had built together? Laura stood up from the table, staring out the window. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg, that there was something much bigger, something much darker lurking beneath the surface of their marriage. For the first time in years, she wondered if she really knew her husband at all. And as the hours passed and Tom still hadn't returned, Laura was left to confront the painful possibility that the life she thought she knew was nothing but a carefully constructed lie. The next morning, Laura woke up with a sense of dread that hung over her like a heavy fog. Tom hadn't returned the night before, and his absence only deepened her suspicions. She had spent the night tossing and turning, unable to stop thinking about the withdrawals from his account, the late nights, and the unexplained silence. It was like a puzzle that she had started to put together, but the pieces just wouldn't fit. Laura tried to go about her day. She dropped the kids off at school and went into work, but her mind was consumed by the thought of Tom and his secretive behavior. She couldn't focus. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart would skip a beat, hoping it was a message from him, some explanation. But nothing came. The hours dragged on, each one feeling longer than the last. By the time she got home, Laura felt emotionally drained. She walked through the door and was greeted by the emptiness of their house. The kids were with their grandparents, and Tom still wasn't home. She wasn't sure if she wanted him there when he finally returned. She wasn't sure if she was ready to confront him, or if she even had the strength to hear his excuses. But something inside her told her that the truth was more important than anything else. She needed to know what was going on. Around 8 p.m., the sound of the front door opening broke the silence. Laura's heart pounded as she stood up from the couch, her mind racing. She could hear Tom's footsteps as he walked through the hallway, but he didn't immediately come into the living room. It was as if he was avoiding her, and that only fueled her anger. She wasn't going to let this go anymore. She couldn't. "Tom," Laura called out, her voice firm but trembling. "We need to talk." A few moments later, Tom appeared in the doorway. He looked disheveled, his eyes tired, and there was an uncomfortable tension in the air between them. He didn't say anything at first, and for a moment, Laura just stared at him, trying to read his expression. He looked guilty, but at the same time, there was something else. Something that told her he was hiding more than he was letting on. "I saw the bank statements, Tom," Laura began, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. "I saw the withdrawals, the dinners, the entertainment. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? Why did you keep it a secret?" Tom's face hardened, but he didn't respond right away. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. His silence only deepened Laura's growing sense of betrayal. "It's not what you think, Laura," he said, finally speaking, but his words lacked conviction. "I swear I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was just stressed with work, and everything got out of hand. It's not an affair. Please, you have to believe me." Laura felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She had already started to connect the dots, and his words didn't reassure her. If anything, they felt like another layer of lies. She had seen the way he was acting, the way he had been pulling away from her, and now she was faced with his denial. But something about the way he said it didn't sit right with her. He wasn't being honest, and it wasn't just about the money or the secretive behavior. It was about something deeper. "Tom," she said quietly, her voice breaking slightly, "I don't know if I can believe you anymore. You've been distant for months, And every time I try to talk to you, you push me away. I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't know what to do about it." Tom took a step closer, his expression softening. "Laura, please. I know I've been distant, but I'm not having an affair. It's just, it's been a tough time at work. I don't know how to explain it, but I swear I haven't been unfaithful." The words felt empty to her. The more he tried to explain, the more she realized that there was something he wasn't telling her. The pain of it all was overwhelming, and despite his assurances, Laura's gut told her that there was more to the story. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about him coming home late. There was something bigger hiding in the silence. "I can't do this anymore, Tom," Laura finally said, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened to spill. "I can't keep living in this silence, pretending everything's fine when I know it's not. I need the truth, all of it, and if you can't give it to me, I'm not sure how we can move forward." Tom stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He looked like he wanted to say something, to make it right, but it was clear to Laura that he had already lost her trust. For the first time in a long time, Laura felt a strange sense of clarity. She couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. She couldn't keep second-guessing herself, wondering what was real and what wasn't. The silence between them had grown too loud, and now it was time for the truth to come out, no matter how painful it was. The silence that followed Laura's words seemed endless. Tom stood there, his face a mixture of guilt and frustration, but there was something else, something darker. Laura could feel it in the air, thick with unspoken words and hidden truths. The emotional weight in the room was almost suffocating. She couldn't bear it any longer. She had spent too many days in the dark, trying to convince herself that everything was fine, trying to make excuses for him. But now she was ready to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. "Tom," Laura said, her voice firm yet trembling with emotion. "I'm done with this. I need to know what's really going on. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when I know it's not. I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you to tell me the truth." Tom opened his mouth, but this time, the words seemed to catch in his throat. He took a few steps back, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Laura watched him closely, every movement, every expression telling her more than he realized. It was obvious that he was struggling, torn between the truth and the lie that he had been holding onto for so long. "You don't understand, Laura," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you. I never thought it would get this far. But the truth is, I've been seeing someone else." The words hit Laura like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of her. She had been preparing herself for something, but she hadn't been prepared for this. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she had to steady herself against the wall to keep from falling. The room spun around her as the reality of what Tom had just confessed sank in. The tears that she had been holding back finally began to fall, but they weren't tears of relief or sadness. They were tears of anger. Anger at herself, anger at Tom, and anger at the betrayal that had ripped apart everything they had built together. She couldn't look at him, couldn't even process his words. All she could hear was the pounding in her chest, the rushing of blood in her ears. She had suspected it for weeks, but hearing it from his own mouth felt like a death sentence to her marriage. The foundation of trust they had built over the years had crumbled, leaving nothing but rubble in its place. She had never imagined that Tom, the man she had married, the father of her children, would be the one to betray her in such a painful way. "I didn't want to hurt you," Tom continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "It just happened. I don't even know how it started. I'm sorry, Laura. I'm so sorry." Laura finally managed to find her voice, though it was thick with emotion. "How long, Tom? How long has this been going on?" Tom hesitated for a moment, as if the question itself was a weight he couldn't bear. A few months? Maybe longer? I don't know. It started with something small, just an innocent conversation, and then it turned into something more. But I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. Laura shook her head, unable to comprehend the depth of his betrayal. You never wanted to hurt me? She repeated bitterly. And yet here we are. You've lied to me for months, kept secrets from me, and you think that saying you're sorry is going to make everything okay? How could you do this, Tom? How could you do this to me? Tom stepped forward, but Laura held up her hand, signaling him to stop. She wasn't ready for any more apologies, any more excuses. The damage had been done, and there was no going back. The trust they had built was shattered beyond repair. She didn't know how she was going to move forward, but she knew that staying in this toxic relationship wasn't an option anymore. I can't keep living like this, Tom, Laura said, her voice breaking but determined. I've been giving you everything, and you've been taking it for granted. I don't know who you are anymore, and I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Tom's face crumpled in guilt, but Laura couldn't bring herself to feel sympathy. She had spent too many years thinking everything was fine, only to discover that her entire world had been a lie. She had trusted him with everything, her heart, her future, their family, and he had betrayed that trust in the most devastating way possible. Please, Laura, Tom pleaded. Don't leave me. We can fix this. I love you. I know I messed up, but we can make it right. Please give me another chance. But Laura knew, deep down, that she couldn't go back. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a simple apology or a promise to change. She had given Tom every chance she could, and he had thrown it all away. The love she once had for him had been tainted by lies and deceit, and now she had to find the strength to move forward without him. I'm done, Tom, Laura said, her voice resolute. I'm done. I need to find myself again, and I can't do that while you're here, breaking everything apart. With that, Laura turned and walked away. The tears continued to fall, but this time they were tears of liberation. She was no longer a victim of betrayal. She was taking control of her life, and she wasn't going to let him, nor anyone, drag her down. The journey ahead was unknown, but Laura knew that it was her journey to take. The days following her confrontation with Tom were a whirlwind of emotions for Laura. She had never imagined that the man she had loved for so many years could hurt her in such a profound way. But now, as painful as it was, she was learning that letting go was the only way forward. She had spent too long trying to fix a relationship that had already been broken beyond repair. Tom's betrayal had shattered her, but it had also awakened something in her, a resilience she hadn't known she had. Laura moved through her daily routine with a new sense of purpose. She spent more time with her children, who had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. She didn't want them to feel the weight of her heartbreak, so she worked hard to keep things as normal as possible for them. But every night, when they went to bed, Laura would sit in the quiet of the house and reflect on everything that had happened. There were moments when the grief would hit her hard, the emptiness that came with the loss of her marriage. But there were also moments when she realized how much stronger she was becoming. She had started going to therapy, something she had put off for years, thinking that she didn't need it. But as she began to explore her feelings and confront her pain, she realized how important it was to take care of herself. Therapy gave her the space to process the betrayal, the space to understand that she wasn't defined by what Tom had done. She was defined by how she chose to rise above it. Over the weeks that followed, Laura made small changes in her life. She started taking better care of herself, physically, emotionally, and mentally. She reconnected with old friends she had lost touch with, and she began to enjoy her own company again. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was reclaiming her life. She was no longer the woman who had been consumed by the lies and deceit of her marriage. She was the woman who was learning to live for herself, to heal, and to embrace her own worth. But even with all the progress she had made, there were still moments when she thought about Tom. There were days when she missed the man she thought she knew, the man who had once made her laugh, the man who had once held her hand and promised to be there forever. But as the days passed, Laura realized that the person she missed was the man she had imagined him to be, not the person he truly was. The truth was that Tom had betrayed her trust in the most painful way. And while she could forgive him for herself, she knew she could never go back to a life that had been built on lies. One evening, as she sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Laura felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. The pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. She had learned to live with it, to accept it as part of her journey. She realized that while she couldn't change the past, she had the power to shape her future. And that future was hers to create. She had learned that love wasn't just about giving. It was about honoring yourself, too. It was about recognizing your own worth and refusing to settle for anything less than what you deserved. She had loved Tom deeply, but she now understood that loving herself came first. As she looked forward to the future, Laura knew that healing would take time. There would still be moments of doubt, moments of sadness, and moments when the scars of betrayal would resurface. But she was no longer afraid of those moments. She had learned to embrace them, to understand that they were a part of her story, but not the whole story. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Laura made a vow to herself. She would continue to grow, continue to heal, and continue to live the life she deserved. A life filled with self-love, self-respect, and the freedom to move forward, no matter what. If you've ever been betrayed, hurt, or left wondering who you really are, know that you're not alone. Healing starts with you. Like and share this video if you believe in the power of self-love and resilience. If you've gone through something similar, drop a comment below and share your story. We are all in this together, and together we can rise stronger.